on here. And I want to welcome everyone to the Early Intervention Special Interest Group Town Hall meeting. I know it's very late on the East Coast, so thanks everybody for joining in if it's late or early, depending on where you're at. I am Priscilla Weaver. I'm the chair of the SIG. So we'll be admitting people as you come in, and we've divided out some roles, so hopefully this all goes smooth. For many of you, how you provide services in early intervention has really changed overnight. So I'm hopeful that this evening will allow for sharing of ideas to better serve our children and families. To minimize background noise, please mute your microphone. Unless you're speaking, please feel free to speak, just mute when you're not speaking. Jamie Holloway will be following the chat for any questions that she feels like she needs to bring to the group. I know sometimes there's great conversations going on the side, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, all right, let's see if I can move on. There we go. So here's our agenda for the evening. It'll begin with a welcome from our APPT president, Cindy Miles, followed by an introduction of our SIG Leadership Team. Also highlight a few resources, but most of the evening is really meant to be member discussion. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start the video here.
Sound.
You're not hearing sound?
No, there's no sound.
Priscilla, I think you have to enable your computer. There you go.
We find ourselves in one of the most unprecedented and extreme challenges that anyone in our lifetime has ever experienced. It's difficult to watch all that's happening across the globe and feel so helpless. As we forge ahead into this unknown, the Academy Leadership has planned a series of town halls, which were kicked off last week with 2 regional SIGs, as well as one with myself on Tuesday. I've been so thankful to be connected to our association, the Academy, and all the individuals involved. It's been a wonderful source of comfort during these unprecedented times. We've received many questions across all practice arenas, and telehealth has quickly become a familiar word and a new intervention platform. APTA has been wonderful to work with. Our Academy, our special interest groups, our advocacy and practice directors, and your entire board have been very busy collaborating with APTA to create documents and resources, which you can find on both of our websites, both APTA and the Academy of APTA and Pediatrics. In addition, the private practice section has opened their website. They're providing a wealth of information and resources for all members and non-members as well. All 18 APT academies and sections have formed an advisory panel. The goal is to share resources across all practices without duplicating efforts. This collaboration reinforces that we are all in this together. I urge all of you to focus on what we know as opposed to what we do not know. Focus on what we can do as opposed to what we cannot. Look for the facts and ignore the fear. As pediatric therapists, we are acutely aware of the impact on children and families we serve. We work with some of the most vulnerable members of our society, many of which have become more vulnerable within the past 3 months and for sure will be going forward. I believe when we emerge, we will discover an unprecedented landscape within pediatrics over the next few years. Now more than ever, we must come together as a profession, as a community, as a nation, as one world. Now more than ever, our APTA President, Dr. Sharon M's belief that we are better together is imperative to lead us through this chaotic, uncharted territory. In a recent call in mid-March with opponent leadership, Dr. Dunn mentioned, adversity does not build character, but it sure does reveal it. Dalai Lama has said that it's under the greatest adversity that there exists the greatest potential for doing good, both for oneself and for others. Academy leadership must position ourselves for the impact of this pandemic. As an academy, I believe we need to be proactive and explore our members' present needs and bring along needs and most support. I've been looking forward to this series of town halls for us to gain a pulse on where individuals are and what our next steps This crisis will affect this generation in ways we cannot foresee. We have to keep looking for the light, no matter how dim. We will emerge better than expected or predicted, and I am confident each of you will continue to give of yourself to reveal the true character and the capacity that you all possess to serve our families as we all come together. With dreaming and memory, your special interest group leader.
Okay, so I've seen many more people sign on in the last few minutes, so I just want to welcome everybody again to the EISIG Town Hall this evening. I'm excited to have this large group of people come together and share different ideas. Okay, so I'll spend just a few minutes going over some things, and then we'll have some open discussion. So in addition to myself, I want to introduce the leadership team for the EISIG. We have Jamie Holloway from Florida. She's our vice chair. So Jamie, just give a little wave. Also, we have Jennifer James from North Carolina, who's our secretary. And then I'm very excited to introduce our new professionals. So we have Jackie Bordeaux from Virginia. So Jackie, if you're on, you can give a wave. And Heather Hagashi from Oregon. So welcome to our team. I also want to welcome some of our board members who are on the call tonight. I see them. Maybe give a wave if you're a board member to the group. Okay, many of you have already seen and heard about the APPT restructuring that was announced at CSM in Denver. I know this is hard to see, but really I'm just trying to show where the SIGs are positioned in this organizational chart. All the SIGs besides the ASIG fall under the leadership of the Director of Practice, who is Jan McElroy from the state of Missouri. Jan, there's her picture, but give a wave if you're on here right now. The APPT is working closely with the APTA and other sections and academies to share resources. So please keep an eye on the website for any kind of news and updates as they come along. You'll see on the screen here a forum. So when you click on the forum button, you'll find a variety of categories where members can post topics for discussion. Under the Pediatric Physical Therapy Practice, we have recently posted the topic Early Intervention Physical Therapy Practice. This is where I've posted this PowerPoint, and also where members can post resources and also continue some of these discussions that we're going to be having. From the homepage under professionals, you can click on the special interest group and join and find all our SIG websites. The EISIG website has been recently updated. We encourage you all to follow us on Facebook. We like to post different resources on Facebook. We also encourage you to join the Division for Early Childhood Community of Practice. We do have a list of fact sheets that are relevant to early intervention, and also began to list links to other websites that provide quality information about serving young children. I also just want to put in a quick plug about our mentoring program. One of our greatest areas of need in the academy for mentorship are actually early intervention physical therapists. There's a wait list right now. I just myself picked up another one today, just pairing with a few others I have. And so I just asked this group to please consider being a mentor if that's an interest of yours. It really is a great experience. Okay, there's a lot of resources that are out there right now, so I certainly don't want to spend the time going through them all by any means, but I did want to highlight this one for the Division for Early Childhood, because when you click on it, they really brought together a lot of those resources that talk about telepractice, and have brought together some worksheets. And so I just want to encourage you to spend some time looking through that website and their resources. Also, I've had some questions about HIPAA in relation to telehealth during this COVID emergency. And so here's a link that just talks about the HIPAA regulations. So I wanted to include that for everybody tonight. And then I was on the ASIG town hall last night, and they talked about how they put together this resource for educators. But when I was looking closer at it, I do feel like a lot of these resources, PTs and early intervention could also use with their families. There's a lot of videos and good information. So just an FYI that this is located under the forums as a resource to all members. And then I don't need to read through this. This just came off of the APPT website in regards to telepractice. And we all know that EI varies so much by state. And so often the answer is to consult with your state board, read your State Practice Act. And so with so many differences by state, there are also many similarities in how we work with children and their families. And so I really hope that discussions tonight can be kind of generalized across states. And they don't have to be, it can be specific to a state, but there's certainly a lot to talk about that we can share across state lines as well. Okay, so I'm guessing that most of you are really here to have these risk discussions about what's going on and questions that people have. I did receive some questions by email in advance, and so I've put them on the slides just really to kick off some conversation. We don't have to go in order. We can start a new question, so there's really no official format. Please feel free to unmute, answer questions, discuss questions. I certainly do not have the answer for everything. I know this is such a rich group of people that can help provide support. And if not during this time, I could always take notes and follow up as well. Okay, so that's really concludes my intro. And so at this point, I really want to open it up, and I might just throw out this first question just to get the ball rolling. So I had one member who contacted me and asked, how are you ensuring parents are receiving quality, my pictures in the quality sessions through telehealth? And so I'm curious to know if anybody has a good response to that. How are you ensuring its quality?
Priscilla, we do have a question that's come up in the chat, similar lines about what are we putting for the change in location on the IFSP?
So far, my only options are home, community. I don't have a on the internet choice on my list.
Our state, I come from New York, we are not having to change that. Our company actually put in telehealth. So we put in telehealth, and then on the note form, we have to say where, like the address. And so I put on DoxyMe or whatever I use to contact the parent, but our state has not told us we are, even with preschool or early intervention, we don't have to change the place that we are seeing them due to the emergency. They're not making us.
So I agree, we haven't done that either. So are you telling us that now that that's a legal requirement and that's something we need to be careful of because it was in the PowerPoint?
So now, are you referring to this? So I pulled this off the website. And I think, once again, I always say this, but it's going to be dependent upon your state and your State Practice Act. And I think you would have to follow that. And then also your agency or your school district and how they decide to handle this. So I'm not saying it's illegal.
But that's a problem that, at least in my practice, I've had ongoing, is often what we're being directed to do by our supervisors is not in agreement with the State Practice Act. And Susan is on speed dial for me because for a long time, she was trying to help me out, sort it out. And in the end, she just said, do what you're told kind of thing, but also listen to your Practice Act. So I'm just wondering, is this one of those times when you're saying this is the Practice Act and you, even if they're not telling you to do it, you should be doing that?
I guess I'm saying probably communicating with your board. And I don't have a great answer to that. I think this is an emergency and there's a lot, even HIPAA is loosening their regulations and saying do the best practice and the best you can and document. And so I don't think it's that black and white.
Yeah, and I can address that a little bit because I put most of this together, and this is just a list of things you have to ask about. All right, things that you need to think about before you enter into any kind of telehealth. So, as Priscilla said, it's going to change state to state. And Jenny, I definitely hear what you're saying because our state did exactly the same thing. They're like, hey, no problem. You can, we're just going to call it consult, and you can go on the phone, you can use Zoom, you can do whatever you want. But my Practice Act said, if it's video, that's telehealth. No matter, and so we had a lot of discussions to kind of come to terms with that. So these are just some of the things that you need to check because often, like you said, the people that give you instructions are maybe sometimes not even therapists and they don't have a Practice Act. And they don't have some of the restrictions that we have. So kind of the bottom line here is no matter what they ask you to do in the end, you're responsible. And so you need to check these things individually. So you feel comfortable that what you're doing is defensible in your state.
So when you make those changes and you set up the meeting, you're not going to have a parent signature. So are you going to uncheck the box with the parent signature, or are you going to check the box and write somewhere that was verbally? How do we close the loop on that?
In my state, it has to be written, and that's up to the service coordinator to get that. And our services are held until the parent returns a written change. But that's my state. I don't know what other states are doing.
So in Pennsylvania, I mean, we're just making sure that we have a consent, a verbal consent, and we read it to the parent each time. And then we're letting them know that we're keeping all the notes that will be signed on the first face-to-face. And that came directly from our service coordinators and telling us to do that with location. We're told to, I think someone wrote in the chat room, they're putting down that it's, due to telehealth, due to COVID. So I think as long as you document all that and continue with that same consent at the top, you're going to help to cover yourself on that as well. And I agree with Jan. I mean, I know Priscilla, you said they've lightened the rules on HIPAA. I don't think that they lightened the rules on HIPAA. I think what that they said is that the states, they won't sue the hospitals, but I've cautioned all of our staff to make sure that you're still looking for something HIPAA compliant, even though they're saying that, because my biggest worry is when this is all over and a parent turns around and says, oh, I didn't realize I gave up that privacy, and it's going to start to trickle down to us. So I think that we do the best we can for our parents, but certainly try to be as compliant as you would if you weren't into this crisis that we are. But that's my opinion.
I agree, Cindy, and I encourage going to that document because it did talk about recommended platforms and still being very open with the families about the privacy issues, and I agree. So
yeah, just read that consent every time. I think so.
Jamie, did I miss anything in the chat? I haven't been following it.
Say that again.
Did I miss anything in the chat? I hadn't been following it.
No, it's just comments on the same topic.
So I did have a member who wanted to ask about groups. So this member has in person, but now recently is thinking about moving groups to telegroups. And so just wanted to know if anybody has done that. How has that worked? What are the challenges that you have faced if you have done that?
This is Robbie. We started doing that a little bit, and we found it to work best if you keep it to under 4 kids. 3 is better. Likabilities is the best. And then in 15 minutes, and then you've lost them. And most of the 2-year-olds try to chew the iPad instead of watch the iPad, or the 1s and 2s. So we've done a couple stories, like movement stories. Usher does a really nice ABC, and a lot of the YouTube, and then we do a book, and we read a book. And in the meantime, then we've been putting out a newsletter to families with lots of links of resources and library resources. So all different kinds of resources as far as money, food, shelter, and then what the heck to do with your child who decided to start moving during this 1 month and they weren't moving previously. And that has worked out very well. And then just like matching, I think our favorite group is a twin group where one twin has a disability and one twin doesn't, and they're all about 1 year old. And so there's only 2 dyads, so it's 4 kids. And that works out really nicely.
Thanks for sharing.
We do have another question in the chat about equipment, which I think might have been on the slides too, about how to order wheelchairs, standers, etc. Time, especially if they need to do a trial run before going back, whenever that might be. So just general equipment questions.
Has anybody been working with us right now? Comment to it.
Yeah, there was a wheelchair that got stuck at school, and we had to lock the locked building. The principal had to get the chair, like get it back to the ATP, and then deliver it to the house yesterday with all the mask and gloves and all that. And some other kids that, you know, need stuff ordered before they start school because I need the crash tested wheelchair in time. And another kid who was in a preschool class where the stander belonged to the school, and now they're home with no stander. So getting that for them. And so far it's been really easy, and I hadn't anticipated how easy it was going to be.
It's like in many states, DME companies are considered essential. You get some concern about going into the home. Looks like equipment deliveries are occurring in some areas, but not in other areas.
Here in Missouri, our DME providers, if they're providing equipment that's paid for through our early intervention program, they are prohibited from having face-to-face visits. And our orthotist is the same way. So it's been real difficult.
Okay. Well, I'll keep going down the list, but feel free to jump in. I don't have to follow this order by any stretch. So one member had asked about length of time, and so how long sessions are lasting. If you find that they're shorter, longer.
Yeah, I think I'm finding that they're a little bit shorter, but not a lot. Like I think generally my average right now is about 45 minutes. But what I am finding is like a lot of it is being ready to hit the ground running. Like I'm finding that I really need to be proactive with families about, okay, like we got to see something, because if we get into moments where like we're not ready to go yet, then we end up just sort of chatting, and then it's like, oh, are we done? So I found that it's really important to kind of have a plan for what you're going to see going in.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting a lot of responses to that question in the chat too. Somebody
Are
also,
there legal ramifications? Like if we have a legal document, this IFSP, aren't we supposed to do our best faith effort to do the same amount?
Our IFSPs are 35 to 60 minutes. I'm usually around 45. And I find that's about the same because I've been doing a lot of prompting with the parents and a lot of verbal cues and hands-on and stuff. And I'm kind of going with what was going on in the homes. So they seem to really be lasting about 45 minutes by the time I make sure the parents are here with me and the trauma and can handle what's going on. We get some stuff done. We talk about what's going on, and then anything that they need for me to get for them for the next week.
I want to go back to Jenny's question about the legalities. Yes, the IFSP is a legal document, and you put in what your plan is. I think just like any other visit, whether it is occurring at the moment in by telecommunications because of COVID or not, if you walked in and the child got sick halfway through the visit, or the child fell asleep and it was really not going to be a good day, you made a good faith effort to have that appointment, and you're not going to be negated if you just never showed up and never communicated, then that's a whole different story, versus you're doing a good faith effort to have the visit, to have communication with the family, to support them and what they're needing to support for their child that relates to the IFSP at that point in time, just like we would be doing whether we were in their home or not. But if it happens to be shorter, it happens to be shorter.
I would echo that and say I've also had some conversations of families who have older kids who are home now. And we have talked about, could we do 30 minutes twice a week rather than try to go for a full hour once a week, and doing some flexible scheduling like that. And as long as kind of we get the service coordinator in on it and reflect those changes, I've had a lot of success having those conversations also.
Yeah, and one thing I've been doing when I realize that my sessions might become shorter because either kids at home and things are kind of getting crazy, I make sure to let the parent know, look, we still have 15 minutes of time left together. It's totally up to you. Like, if you feel like we can't complete this session right now, that's totally your prerogative, but I just want to let you know we have this time so we can use it if you want to. That way I can document that I let the family know we had that extra time. But just because of the circumstances of everything right now, they chose not to. So I just make sure to document kind of that they knew they had more time, but they just chose not to use it.
Love it. So good.
We also had a question in the chat that came up about how people are handling new consults or evaluations of people that you weren't already working with. How people are addressing that.
I don't have personal experience here because I'm not seeing kids in EI right now, but from the town hall with the hospital-based and NICU SIGs that occurred earlier in the week, it was something that they were cautioning. They can't see someone, just add someone to their case without evaluating. And so unfortunately, I think these families and kids are getting caught. And certainly according to our practice act and then payer sources, that would be the issue. So yeah, it looks like in the chat, everybody's saying no new assessments. So
Yeah.
Hi everyone. Here in Washington, at least in King County, in Seattle, we're allowed to use the DAISY. And so we've just been doing that and just trying our best to use our clinical judgment, and knowing that although we can't get our hands on the child, just trying to at least get their foot in the door is better than nothing at all at this point. So that might be something to look into to see if other outcome measures are still allowed in your state.
I have done 2 core evals in the past week in New York State. We're using the DAISY because the DAISY, the AIMS for PT qualification, and then we also use the ELAP or the HELP to assess the other areas. And they did tell us if the child is on the fence, if they're close to qualifying or not, they asked us to hold and not qualify, and we will qualify them or reevaluate them once we get back to hands-on treatment. But the 2 that I've done so far have very obviously qualified. So they are qualifying and they will be starting services if we can find therapists for them.
Hi, everyone. This is Laura Zawacki. I'm a therapist in Chicago. And I have done 2 AIMS and 1 TIMP so far, and they all have gone really, really well. The idea really was more for parent education, but I felt super confident with the results of all of them. And I feel like it was a very beneficial use of the telehealth time that I had scheduled. Not necessarily to qualify children, they were all already qualified, but more for one of them, the child had qualified several months earlier and had not started services yet. And then the other ones were upcoming 6-month reviews, and we just wanted to have kind of a summary of our progress.
In Missouri, as of Monday, the governor made some sort of proclamation allowing all healthcare professionals, including PTs, to do evaluations on telehealth. I haven't done one yet. So I think even with that, you have to use your judgment about whether you think you can actually do a reasonable assessment and have valid results. So you have to use your judgment on top of it. But it was a really big announcement. So we were excited.
So it looks like a mix by state as always. So I heard this come up a couple times. This is just one email, and then someone had mentioned it earlier today too, but just how to really access the under-resourced population in the situation going on right now. So if anybody has any great ideas for that or anything they've done that has worked or not worked, that'd be great.
Priscilla, can you say that again for me?
Yeah, so really just, you can see it on the screen there. I had a couple members that were just asking about how to serve the underserved population. And so and this person was asking if Spanish translated materials, if there was any recommendations for those. Just has anybody worked through this?
I would say, so I've used a mix of Zoom and now WebEx, and WebEx specifically has some really helpful like screen share videos that walk you through like how to use the platform. And even though the videos that I have are in English, the Spanish speaking families I work with have found that to be really helpful, because if they can't necessarily like read what's on a button, they can see like, oh, I click here and then I click here. And it helps that I speak enough Spanish to sort of walk them through it, but they found that to be a really helpful resource for figuring out kind of how the system works as far as how to interface with things.
I've been having to call the language line and have myself, the translator, the mother, sometimes the OT or the vision teacher on the phone, and then everyone else is on the video without any kind of sound, minus the translator, because the language line people aren't allowed to call out or aren't allowed to call into whatever computer program you're using. Has anyone found a better solution for that?
I have actually had language line folks be able to jump on the video call with me. So I don't know, we had a 90-minute meeting with our local language line coordinator, but we've been successful in doing that. So I don't know.
Wow, you belong to a very flexible group of people. Congratulations. I just want to use my old translator. Like, we still have ways of paying her. She would come on Zoom with us because she knows us. She knows the work we're doing. She knows the terminology. You know, she knows our personalities. It's so frustrating to lose that piece of the team.
We do also have a question about families being overwhelmed. Has anybody encountered ones that have declined or requested a pause or some sort of other way of service other than a face-to-face, maybe a phone or just giving resources, email, and how people have addressed that?
This is Lynn again.
I belong to a group of individuals who do private practice, and one of them is actually out in Washington State, so the epicenter there, Kirkland, and they're finding that a lot of the individuals who had started telehealth at the beginning of, a couple months ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, are now like backing off and saying, "Go here, we'll take a break." But the ones that didn't want it in the beginning are now calling, so it's kind of like a little bit of a revolving. And I think we're starting to see the same thing because we've been doing it now for about 3 weeks at our practice. So some of the parents are, okay, I got this, let's wait till we come back. And then others are saying, hey, can we start? So we're kind of seeing that happen.
I'm not seeing families right now, but I think you have to go along with early intervention when we're looking at that under law is a family choice, and they have the ability to move in and out. So the ability to say, I need to put this on hold. And I also think maybe we need to, I know it deals with IFSP and planning and those kinds of things, but maybe this becomes a time of more episodes of care versus ongoing care every week, or whatever that IFSP is set up, which I know takes more paperwork and conversations. But as Cindy was saying, you may have a family who's, you got them through and you've got them some structure for these next 3 or 4 weeks, and they're ready to go for a while. And then they'll be ready for some more support as compared to the ongoing support. Other families will want that ongoing resource and support and conversations. And others will have so many things happening in the home that keeping their kids alive, bathed, sleeping, and food and clothes is the priority at that point in time.
I think what we found with some of ours are the individuals that are foster care, and it's, you know, they're regulated by law that they have to do it. And you have a mother, my 3 or 4 children in foster care, and then their own children doing homeschooling. They're very overwhelmed and just wish there were, you know, more ways that we could help. I will say though that I think that this is the ultimate coaching model. If anything, it's certainly driving home the whole premise of early intervention. So I think us having to do this is great, because then the parents are more engaged. We found that our families are a lot more engaged. So there's a lot of positives to it, but I struggle with the ones that are struggling, that are overwhelmed as well. But if we could figure out ways to help them. And I see lots of people are putting on the chat that they call in, check in, and our staff is doing the same, just the ones that are asking for it, or that they give you a phone call or send a little video. And I think that the more we could do that, like you said, Lynn, let's do it where they need it.
No, this is right. We've also been doing grocery drop-offs and food drop-offs for folks, and if they can't get to the food pantries. And in Chicago, we have a Chicago Furniture Bank, and so some families have gotten furniture bank deliveries. And so just trying to be creative, working with the social work and social service communities to try to coordinate some efforts there to help that overwhelmingness. So it doesn't actually have anything to do with PT directly, but it has everything to do with the family and trying to meet that family service plan.
This is Jan again, following up with that overwhelmed families idea. I'm just wondering how you word it in your conversations with the families so that they don't feel like you're pushing for them to back off to a different model, but they know that they don't have to accept it. Does that make sense?
I end up just texting the families about every week, every other week, depending on the family, saying, hey, just checking if everything's okay, seeing if you need anything. Can you I'm just checking in. Don't feel like you have to text me back right away, but we'll see. And most families will then end up texting me within a couple of days saying, no, we're good, or hey, I have concerns about this. And I've had a couple families that said, you know what, can we start the telehealth at this point? So it's not pushing, it's just a check in with them. And they've seen, I get a couple of, oh, look, they did this week. And so it's been kind of nice to have that. I have to record from my notes that I have contacted the families and what I'm offering to them. So it gives me that too.
My son just lost his tooth. So I'll be out in a minute. Sorry.
Congratulations to him. I guess the tooth fairy's coming, right?
Yeah. I think as Jenny said, their state, they're not allowed to text. So this really comes down to what are you allowed to do based on your program's policies, etc. And then you identify ways to communicate with the families. If it's leaving them a voicemail, if it's sending them a letter, if it's sending an email, whatever you're allowed to do, but be creative within that time frame.
This is Robbie. I wanted to comment on that handling comment, which I think is really good. But back to Cindy's comment of really parent coaching, it really does force us to figure out how to communicate with the parents. And I think the baby doll, we all got baby dolls ordered. Today I used a bongo that they happen to be laying in the background as a bolster. So it really does, I think you get to be really creative, and you're like the shiny penny. You're like, drive me around your house and let me see what's in the background. Oh, we can use that, we can use that. But the families have to learn somehow, and this is like learn by fire, but you're just like move your fingers a little bit up, or see how they got stiff right away. And so, but it's clunky until you get used to it, for sure. It's clunky.
So I have a question about recording direct versus indirect services. In my state anyway, we do split that out. And of course in IFSPs, I guess it doesn't matter so much, but as long as, do your agencies or your states require a difference? And do your IFSPs assume that you will have direct, and what is that defined as with telehealth?
Which state are you in?
I'm in Nebraska.
Okay, so here I'm going to come in from my education framework. Coaching, interacting with families, interacting with those individuals in real time, even though it's by a video conference system, you are directly interacting with that child and that family and supporting their care. When you look at indirect in most service delivery settings, when that is discussed, that is more that not real-time discussion that is used to support the family, like finding someone to come in and consult with something that's going on, pulling resources together to send on to them that's available, getting paperwork written up to support that individual or document what that individual is going. So I think if you think about direct as you're directly engaging with individuals, that might help you with your definitions. And if you hold that consistent and then your team discusses that, as a team, you all are thinking the same thing when that is a requirement within your policies.
And thinking about policies, one thing that I hadn't really thought about, and maybe I should have thought about because I have been in private practice, but some of individuals that I'm working with, they came up with different policies for personal device policy for your staff, and also a work from home policy. So it might be something to think about if your administrators, or to talk to your administrators about for yourself, just to make sure that those are in place. It wouldn't be a bad idea just to have from a protective standpoint. And I think if someone has, if people want to share what they have on that, it's just the thought, just putting, yeah.
Yeah, good question.
This is a whole new ball, right?
Yeah. Great questions, great discussion going on over here in the chat. But I just want to keep it open. We don't need to follow my slides.
I had one other thought that I see, like, people saying that like telehealth isn't always accessible in very rural areas, which is 100% an experience that I've had. But something else that I've found is the local, like, and I'm in a very small town, so it's very local, but like the local, like, city internet has been pretty willing to support families who are needing medical supports specifically. So I work with several kids who are reasonably medically complex, and they've been able to get temporary internet access in their home for the purpose of us being able to do services with them. And we had to sort of be aggressive about it, but I mean, that's something that can work if in specific circumstances, if you can help the family really advocate for why that's important.
There is also a question I missed before in the chat about using home health for any medically fragile on the caseload, if anybody's been utilizing that.
I don't know exactly what you mean by home health. Cause yeah, the home health PTs in our area are doing less probably than the EI folks are. But I have had, I mean, luck a lot of times with talking to home health nurses that are in the home and really coordinating care with those people as well, and kind of circling up around kids that way.
Yeah, we've had some medically fragile folks who don't have private duty nursing they don't qualify for waiver or for other reasons. And we've been talking about it on the American Academy of Cerebral Palsy side. Is that something we should be recommending to families, that if they're not getting their services and they feel like they have to have, for whatever reason, direct services, is that an option? Because it's, at least we're hearing that all the home health agencies are still going into people's homes. So I was just wondering if anybody had any experience with that.
We also have a question about how people are handling monitoring in virtual sessions with children that are medically fragile.
I think I will agree with the comment who said that the parents of the kids who are medically fragile a lot of times have that on lock. And so something that I've been doing at the top of those sessions, I just got off a session with a child that has a trach and some other things, is saying, okay, so walk me through your plan, walk me through what's happening with the oximeter, walk me through what's happening with the suction, and really kind of having them talk me through their plan, and then we check in on it every once in a while. And it's been a cool way for caregivers to sort of be able to verbalize those things that a lot of times they're already doing.
Wow, somebody's still able to go to the homes. That's absolutely amazing.
Colorado.
Denise brought up that one of the challenges is IDEA timelines and children who are transitioning to Part B. I think as Part C providers, you have to document, this would be my opinion, you have to document the ability that you've had those conversations, you have attempted those conversations. If school systems are shut down, then that it is, you're outside of the law's timelines, but it's due to COVID, it's not due to your attempts. So I don't think any program would be fined, or I would hope no program would be fined or identified if you can document that you've made every attempt to begin that process and to have those communications. But that takes work. That's where working with your teams and your coordinators and working the school districts you typically work with have to be having those conversations. And if those individuals aren't at work and are not being allowed to work from home, then you can have that documentation in place.
Looks like from the comments, some school districts are having those meetings by Zoom, evals are being completed, but concerns about other areas not being ready to go back to school. Yeah, it's messy. So I guess as we're getting closer, I mean, any advice, anything that's really working well in EI? Any strategies that you're like, wow, that just worked great with families?
Hi, I'm Pam Roberts, and I'm not practicing right now, but I have lots of families that I treated in the past who are in touch with me because they know that I might know the thought process around some things. I was glad to have Lynn popping in as well because we're out there, we've got all this in our head, and what I'm doing in retirement is on an advocacy council for children in the town, and I've been pushing them to work with our libraries and to make all of the things that are available to families that have young children. And so the parents that are also taking care of trying to supervise other children through their remote education have some resources to try to use with younger children. 1s, 2s, and 3s is the area that I've been pushing them to have a category for. And there's lots and lots of really short segments of video that are being put up by the librarians are working. There's nobody coming to the library. They don't have a lot of their regular tasks to do, so they're resourcing and putting those up. The town social worker in charge of young children is putting those onto a website, and all of the teachers, all of the social workers, all of the religious and faith communities that are working to care and show that there's connections for all these families are have access to that. And so they just download something as simple as Itsy Bitsy Spider that they can put on while they're trying to deal with a math problem that's happening. And what I think is happening when I bring up the issue of early intervention is that, you know, I myself don't know what's happening in Connecticut right now, and I was hoping somebody else might be able to tell me what is happening. I've gone to the websites and I see the coronavirus thing up at the top, but I don't see how they're modifying or accommodating based on that. So libraries, advocacy councils in towns are places to go and let them know what you're trying to do, and those connections will automatically sort of develop. We're in a university town, but the university is shut down. So a lot of the things that I would normally be using, like a referral to an audio clinic and things like that, are not happening because they're not considered part of the medical system. They're considered part of the consulting education research system. So I don't know, I wanted to say hi to everybody and just say that I'm so excited because 20 years ago we were talking about trying to do this in early intervention, because there's times that, you know, you've got a cold and you don't want to walk into the home, for example, and there were no options to try to do that. So you guys are really out there and making this happen, and I'm so excited to hear from everybody. So, and thanks for reminding me about the mentors, because if somebody doesn't mind a mentor that's not actually working, I'll want to do it.
Great.
Please do. Please, please.
Yeah, please,
Yes.
that'd be great. Thank you for those comments. It looks like there's one person from Connecticut other than you. So she put, this just began tele-intervention for families in Connecticut.
We've had a few questions come up in the chat. Somebody has requested that we try to do, if this continues, a town hall meeting maybe every few months, because this has been beneficial, hearing that other people are going through the same thing. And probably something we can do, although I kind of hope it doesn't continue. And then we've had, this one's gotten some responses in the chat, but if anybody wants to say anything else, there's questions about how to do telehealth with a 2-year-old with severe autism, the mom receptive to coaching, so looking for some resources and strategies around that. There's been a few things that have, you know, been recommended in the chat, but in case anybody had anything else to add, we'll like Jeff.
Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, and a couple things. I mean, some of this discussion can certainly continue on the forums. As far as the EISIG goes, we are more than happy if you guys want more town halls. We can, you know, someone mentioned every couple months or whatever, you know, we're open to having more. So we are certainly here for you. So just reach out to us and let us know what you need and what's helpful, and we'll, you know, try the best we can to make that happen. And then as far as the copy of the chat, so yes, I believe we can get a copy of the chat, the PowerPoint, and also the recorded video, and we'll be posting those. Is it in the forum or on the website? Lynn, I'm kind of looking at you, Jeffries. I thought you knew before, but
Jan, do you know?
Yeah.
I've seen him in 2 places.
Yes, it'll be posted on the SIG website, and then it's up to the SIG if they would like to post it on the forum as well. So it has been on the forum and on the SIG. So it's up to you if you want to do it on both sites.
okay, and then if you want to be a mentor, the email is listed over there on the chat. So just reach out to them directly and they'll try to pair you up, I think pretty quickly. Okay, well, in the last 5 minutes here, and I personally have really enjoyed this. I think just like some others, there's so many positive things that are coming out of this. Obviously, so many challenges, but also so many positive things that we're learning from this and from each other. So just any closing comments before we wrap this up?
This is Robbie. I was going to say, especially for the kids, like the kid with ASD, it would be almost fun to do a cross-state connection with the small groups of families. So if there's a family in wherever and there's another family in whoever, connect them. Of course, after COVID goes away and telehealth is suddenly illegal again, it might be, but then maybe the families could keep up a connection. But for those kids that need a like match, maybe to reach out to the group, and if the families are agreeable to it, to do a like match small group across state lines. I don't know how you'd bill, and I don't know how you'd write it up, but it might be fun to do.
Sounds innovative. Great. Okay, well, I just want to thank everybody for spending their evening with us, and I'll certainly follow up with this group to see if we can do this again. So thanks everybody, and take care and keep doing all the great work that you're doing. Okay, have a great night.
Thank you everyone for coming.